Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Again this evening we shall speak a little about the glories of His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada. We'll just speak a little about his glories, because even if we had a lifetime of Lord Brahma, we couldn't come to the end of his glories. So however much we speak in an hour or so is hardly even going to touch the shore of the great ocean of his transcendental qualities. I remember shortly after joining ISKCON, I was reading The Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and I was surprised that one of the first statements there is that Bhakti is greater than Bhagavan, because even Bhagavan is attracted by Bhakti. It has the power to attract Bhagavan. So we just were singing now how Narottam Das is praising how in some ways the devotee is even greater than Bhagavan himself. Gangara parasha haide paschate pavan darshane pavitra karo eto margun. Well, this is comparing the Vaishnav to Ganga. Ganga is also Vaishnav, she is Vaishnavi. But by contacting or touching the water of Ganga, many times over a long period one becomes purified. But immediately by contact with a great devotee one is purified. Haristhane aparadhe tare harinam. If one commits an offense to Lord Hari, he may be delivered from that by chanting the name of Hari. Tomas thane aparadhe nahi keran. But if one commits an offense to the great devotee, there is no circumventing that, no avoiding the offense. That is apparent in the story of Durvasa insulting Ambarish Maharaj. So by the grace of Bhagavan, the devotee may seem to be more than him. Ram, Bhagavan, crossed to Lanka on a bridge of floating stone. So that is something wonderful. But Hanuman just jumped. So it appears that Hanuman was more than Ram. And actually it's a fact that by remembering the devotees, we please Krishna. As Prabhupada used to say, if you want to please a man, you have to please it in the Western world, you please his dog, because he's attached to his stupid dog. So in the same way, if we become attached to a Vaishnav, then somehow or other, if we become attached to a Vaishnav, we get the blessings of Bhagavan. Somehow or other, if we become attached to a Vaishnav, we get the blessings of Bhagavan. One example is the story of Gajendra Mochan. That Gajendra was actually a Vaishnav from a previous life. He was Maharaj Indradyumna, but somehow or other, due to a curse, he took the body of a dumb elephant. So the crocodile was fighting with Gajendra, who was eventually delivered by Lord Vishnu. And the jiva in the body of the crocodile was blessed by Lord Vishnu by having his head severed from his body by the Sudarshan Chakra. So he was delivered from the crocodile body to a heavenly form. So he also got such benefit because he had been in contact with the lotus feet of the Vaishnava. Of course, biting in envy, that is not recommended. But somehow or other there is benefit by doing so. Our own Srila Prabhupada is undoubtedly the most prominent disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Srila Prabhupada was actually very critical of some of his godbrothers, who were also disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So Prabhupada criticized some of them for being materialistic. He said they were just interested in enjoying the buildings of the Gauriya Math, but not serving the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And one particular godbrother of Srila Prabhupada was actually appeared to be very envious of him. He was always criticizing Prabhupada. So eventually, when he passed away, some of the devotees... No, I'll tell you something more about him. That Prabhupada also said about him that he thought that the Gauriya Math was a joint he was one of the first disciples, and Prabhupada said that he thought that I started this, it's like a venture, a business that I started with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada said about this godbrother, he was one of the first disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and actually he organized the whole Gauriya Math from the beginning. So Prabhupada described his mentality that myself and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati started the Gauriya Math. He was the senior partner, now he passed away, so now it's all my property. This children, they shouldn't run in and out. Please, you can just close it. Can we lock the door so they can just play outside? Yeah. Prabhupada said his bhakti was like that of Putana. He came as if he was friendly, but actually his intention was just the opposite. So in this way, Prabhupada was, extremely critical of him. And we shall neither say that Prabhupada is wrong, nor shall we ourselves criticize in the same way. We shall not say that Prabhupada is wrong, and at the same time we shall not criticize in the same way. But anyway, after this godbrother of Prabhupada's passed away, then one of Prabhupada's leading disciples asked Prabhupada, well, what happened to him? Where did he go after passing away? So Prabhupada said he went back to Godhead. So then the devotee asked, well, how was that possible? Because he was always so envious and critical. Prabhupada replied that, well, my Guru Maharaj, namely Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he is very merciful. He just took the good side. He accepted the good part. That just like Krishna, he found something good in Putana and he delivered her. So my Guru Maharaj delivered this godbrother. So somehow or other we should try to remain in contact with the great devotee. Of course it is better to remain in contact in a favorable manner. We would prefer to be like, to develop the mood of Nanda and Yashoda rather than that of Kamsa and Putana. So we shall try to develop a favorable service attitude towards Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I was describing this morning something about his teachings, and from that you could get a little bit of an idea of how complex, in such a complex manner, he presented the teachings of Krishna consciousness. So for us, practically, to serve Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur means to do so through Srila Prabhupada. By serving Srila Prabhupada in his mission, we are connected with all the great acharyas of the parampara. Now one thing, we find that Srila Prabhupada very much emphasized book production and book distribution. So Prabhupada, he got this inspiration from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Prabhupada said, I learned all about the practical things, or I learned all about Krishna consciousness from actually in my childhood, from my father. But the extra or the special thing that I received from my Guru Maharaj was this instruction about book production and distribution. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to call the printing press the Brhad mrdanga, or the big drum. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement is the Sankirtan movement, which means, Sankirtan means complete glorification. And that is generally executed through the medium of singing the holy names of Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would personally go from town to town and village to village, singing the names of Krishna. And his followers, the Gauriya Vaishnavas, do the same thing. His followers, the Gauriya Vaishnavas, do the same thing. In Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, the mridanga and kartal, they are the essential paraphernalia. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he called the printing press the Brhad mridanga. He gave the example that if you go on the street or in the marketplace and chant the holy names, the sound of the mridanga may be heard for some distance, maybe 100 meters or 200 meters. But the effect of the printing press of books and magazines being printed, that goes all over the world. He personally wrote so many books, and his disciples did also. He said that temples and temple worship, that is especially meant for neophyte devotees. But the engagement of advanced devotees is to write and publish many books and distribute them all over the world. Well, that doesn't mean that every devotee who comes to a temple or lives in a temple is a neophyte. That does not mean that every devotee who comes to a temple or lives in a temple is a neophyte. But those who don't see anything beyond this, who have no life for preaching, they are considered neophyte devotees. In one of the several poems or songs that he wrote, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, Pran ache jar shehetu prachar. That who has got life, he can preach. So he had several magazines and publications, including a daily newspaper called the Dainik Nadia Prakash. Daily Nadia Prakash. That was the name of the newspaper, which ran daily for several years. One of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's admirers was Madan Mohan Malavya. Maybe you know his name. He was prominent in the Indian independence movement. So he once asked Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, how can you have a daily newspaper about spiritual topics? So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur replied that this Calcutta, it is just one small city in a big world. Of course, Calcutta is not a small city, but its size compared to the whole world is very small. And in this city, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, there are about 20 daily newspapers. Actually, in most places there used to be more newspapers. The number has decreased. Have you seen that in your lifetime? The number has decreased. So he said that, you see, this is only one small city, but it has so many newspapers. And they only have information about this little planet. But we have information about the vast, unlimited spiritual world. What to speak of daily, we could produce a newspaper every minute. But unfortunately there is lack of interest or lack of subscribers to such information. So this Dainik Nadia Prakash was selling for 1 or 2 paise. And if some brahmachari would sell even a few copies, 1 or 2 copies, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would become very pleased. Once Srila Prabhupada met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at Radha Kund. That is the most sacred place in the universe. Is generally considered the most, among Gauriya Vaishnavas, it is understood as the most sacred place in the universe. That is the pond of Radharani, which is none different from her. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur met, at that time he was Abhay Charana Das Adhikari at Radha Kund. Abhay Charana Das Adhikari. Das Adhikari. So this was a meeting between 2 titanic acharyas. Means, very great. Mega. You say mega? Oh, I see. Mega is also great. It means similar thing. It means very great. At the most sacred place. And we could expect that there would be some very important discussion. And there was. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said to Abhay Charana Das, he said that some of my senior disciples are fighting amongst themselves. And this is giving me much distress. Previously we were staying in a rented building in Calcutta. But now by the gift of one of his rich disciples, J.B. Datta, they had a very opulent marble temple. J.B. Datta was his. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that now my leading disciples, they are fighting. Who will occupy this room? Who will get the best room? And so on. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, I think it is better if we dismantle the temple, sell off the bricks, and use the money to print books. Of course, there's no indication that he actually had any intention of doing that, but he was expressing his desires. So at that time, he told Abhayacharya Aravinda Das some words which were to become very famous. If you ever get money, print books. So Prabhupada said, I realized at that time how much importance he placed on books. Srila Prabhupada, in establishing this Hare Krishna movement all over the world, has emphasized the importance of distributing books, because he wants to please his own Gurudev, and his Guru is pleased by distribution of books. And why is he pleased? Because that is the best method to spread Krishna consciousness, that people can get, it goes very widely, like we were saying, it's the big mrdanga, and anyone who gets a book and reads that, then they'll never be the same. Anyone who gets a book and reads it, they'll never be the same. Prabhupada said, anyone who reads Krishna book will become a devotee. He said that Bhagavad Gita as it is, that anyone who, this book is sufficient for becoming Krishna conscious. So, many of you are engaged in distributing these books, and those who are not should try to become engaged in the distribution of his books. Those who are not engaged in that should try to become so. Of course, we need so many services need to be done. Pujaris, cooks, all kinds of different services need to be done. But everyone should try to take part in the book distribution, at least sometime. This will be our offering to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who himself spent much time writing books and engaged his disciples in doing so. And our own Srila Prabhupada, of course, he spent much time writing books. Even when he was traveling all over the world, he used to not sleep at night. One godbrother suggested to me that I do the same thing. Like Srila Prabhupada, preach in the day and then don't sleep at night and just work on books at night. But I'm not capable of that. But many times Prabhupada said that he would like to withdraw from, especially from management. He was much involved in the management of his temples. Your Tamil is very good. You don't use English words. You could have just said management. But you like to speak pure Tamil. That's good. Some other word. Yeah. Yeah. Generally in Hindi or Bengali, if you don't know the word, you just say it in English. But you don't take that shortcut. That's good. Better to keep the language pure. So, I can also understand you're not a manager because you don't know the word. You don't know the word for management. So, Prabhupada, in one letter, he wrote that if necessary, I can just stop all my traveling and preaching, but I cannot stop writing these books. Because Prabhupada was saying that I'm doing so much traveling and preaching, I could be doing more writing of books. But so he said, if I have to choose, better I stop the traveling and preaching. Prabhupada said, I cannot stop that because that is my service to my Guru Maharaj. He took this as his most important service, to write these books. Of course, Prabhupada, he didn't stop either activity. He didn't stop either activity. But we see his dedication to writing or composing his books. That even when he was lying on the bed in Vrindavan shortly before passing away, apparently very weak, he had hardly strength to speak, but his mental functions were as clear as ever. You can see it was filmed. You can see the recording of that. That Prabhupada lying on his bed, just with whatever little energy he has, very faintly speaking, dictating his purports to Srimad Bhagavatam. So up to the last breath, he was serving his Guru Maharaj by composing these books. Of course, it's not his last breath. Those who, up to the last breath, go on serving Krishna, they go on serving Krishna. So Prabhupada, like his own Guru Maharaj, showed us the path of constant absorption in Krishna consciousness. So let us pray for the blessings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that we can serve the mission of Srila Prabhupada. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very strict. Prabhupada said, I'm 80% more lenient than my own Guru Maharaj. But then again, Prabhupada also said that when Prabhupada was traveling all over the world, he wouldn't see his disciples so often. And he said that, well, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he will look after you. He gave the example that the grandfather is more kind than the father. The father is naturally kind to his children, but the grandfather is more kind. So Prabhupada said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he will look after you. So, prati janme janme asha charanera dhuli. We simply pray for the dust, or we simply desire the dust of the lotus feet of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, life after life. Our link with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is through Srila Prabhupada. These are all Mahan, super Mahabhagavats. There is no language which can describe the greatness of these persons. It is very difficult to understand Krishna, but by their mercy they make it possible. Yeah. So if we can somehow or other become attached to their lotus feet, we will get the blessings of Krishna. Is there any question anyone would like to ask about this? Hopefully, next time I come here, I'll be here, then I'll be here probably in Vellore area, in and out until about February. Then after that, I'm not sure when I'm coming. But the next time when I come, then that book should be printed about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It'll probably take some time before it's printed in Tamil. But anyway, then that will be something useful I did in this life. So those of you who can read English, they can read it. You have to be very careful of English. Most of the garbage ideas in the world are transmitted through English. Rubbish ideas. On the other hand, Prabhupada's books are in English, so that's the best things. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted Prabhupada to preach in English. Just about 2 weeks before Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur passed away from this world, he sent a letter to Prabhupada. Prabhupada had written to him and said that you have so many sannyasis and brahmacharis who are fully engaged in your service in the mission. But I'm a grihastha, at that time he was a grihastha, and I'm not able to serve you in the same way as they are. So he wrote the question, how can I serve you? And about 2 weeks before the passing away of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which was incidentally on January the 1st, 1937, he sent the letter to Abhay Charanaravinda Das, in which he said that you are expert in English, so if you try to preach in English, that will be good for you and good for others. So Prabhupada recognized this as the same instruction he had received when he first had darshan of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in 1922. So you can... Anyway, I don't recommend you spend much time trying to learn English. Try to learn about Krishna in any language. But if you do have access to English, then you can read Prabhupada's books. And actually reading Prabhupada's books is a good way to learn English, because they're in very... the linguistic style is very simple and very clear. At the same time, it's very sober, good class of English. So, Hare Krishna. Again, is there any question?
How can we be enjoyed by the great enjoyer? Like you were telling in the morning that Krishna is the enjoyer, and we we have to be enjoyed by Him.
Yeah, how can we be enjoyed by Krishna? What do you mean? That Krishna is so great and we're so small? That how can He enjoy us? What is the essence of the question?
Like you said about the enjoy, that word.
Yeah. So we are enjoyed by Krishna means that we are meant for Krishna's service. Everything we do should be for Krishna's pleasure. That just like we may like to dress ourselves very nicely, that is something done for personal enjoyment. But that same propensity, if we instead dress Krishna very nicely, that is Krishna consciousness. We like to eat very nice foods, but if instead we think, how can I cook very nicely for Krishna? That is Krishna consciousness. And Krishna appreciates that attitude. Krishna appreciates means He likes that. He takes pleasure in that. Krishna says, Patrang pushpang phalang toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tadahang bhakti upahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. One who, following the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga, who offers with bhakti to me fruit, flower, leaf or water, I accept it. So why should Krishna accept leaf, flower, fruit or water? They're ordinary things and they're all made by Krishna. He accepts it because it is offered with love. Prabhupada gave the example that a man may be sitting and eating with his young child. So he's eating and also feeding his child, encouraging the child to eat. So in the course of eating, if the child thinks, oh, this is something which tastes very nice, and he takes some of that and gives to his father, says, this is very nice, you take it, you enjoy it also. So the father becomes very pleased by the attitude that because he loves me, he wants to give that which is enjoyable to him, to me. So that's an example. That is the essence of bhakti. That instead of thinking, what I will serve God and in exchange He will give something to me. That is not bhakti, that is a kind of business. But when we think how to act only for His pleasure, that is pure devotional service. Anya bhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. This means that the Uttama Bhakti, the highest level of bhakti, is that which is without the propensity for other desires. Other desires means desires for gross material enjoyment or even on the intellectual front. That Uttama Bhakti is executed, it's a cultivation of devotion in a manner that is always favorable for becoming more and more advanced. This is it is the essence of everything we're trying to teach you. It means a change of consciousness. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur used to say there is Jagat Darshan and Golok Darshan. Jagat Darshan means to see this world and consider oneself an enjoyer of it. And Golok Darshan means to see that everything is meant for Krishna's enjoyment. This attitude is the necessary the necessary requirement for entering into Golok.
So some of the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur have earlier tried to preach Krishna consciousness in the Western world, but they didn't succeed as did Prabhupada. What's the reason he's asking?
Yeah. Did everyone hear the question? Well, from the external point of view, that could be seen that just shortly after they went, then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur passed away, and there was chaos in the Gauriya Math. Chaos, the infighting. Prabhupada said that there was the lack of the proper service attitude. That those who went, it seemed they were more interested in advertising themselves as great preachers than in actually changing people's hearts. Anyway, again, we have to be very careful when we consider these topics. We have to see with two kinds of vision. On the one hand, there are many lessons to be learned from the disintegration of the Gauriya Math. Actually, Prabhupada shouldn't have needed to have started ISKCON. It should have just gone on. Is the mission that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati started. Well, it didn't stop. There still is Gauriya Math today. But it's split into many groups. And for a long time, they lost much an idea of preaching. Or at least in the same dynamic way that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. The infighting and the breakup of the Gauriya Math was a traumatic experience for its members. So we should learn from that we have to, within ISKCON we should all cooperate together and keep the spirit of the Acharyas alive. At the same time, Prabhupada said that even though he himself was critical of his godbrothers, he said that his own disciples should not criticize his godbrothers. Prabhupada said actually they're all great personalities, but there is differences of opinion about preaching. So we shouldn't criticize them. They are great persons. It's just like, in the family there are different brothers, and the father might warn his children that you be careful of that brother of mine. He's not properly on the line. Maybe, one brother, he's not behaving properly or something. So they warn him. The father will warn his children, be careful of my brother. So the children take the warning, but at the same time, the uncle is still an uncle and he should be respected as such. And that's a rough example.